Hi, good morning. My name is Harla Rudolph. I am a speech language pathologist at the Speech Tree, and I'm here today with
Karalyn Herban. I am an occupational therapist with Ready, Set, Grow.
And we are here today on our very first podcast. The reason we're here is to just spread information to parents, professionals, a little bit about what we do and what speech therapy, occupational therapy, and any type of developmental therapy can offer children. So with that being said, I think we should start by, again, introducing Karalyn. And Karalyn, if you could just let everybody know your story and how you started, what made you become an occupational therapy, and what made you start Ready, Set, Grow, your practice.
Okay, so I've been an occupational therapist for about 25 years. I've been solely in pediatrics. When I was in high school, I volunteered with children in a lot of ways. My mom was a special ed teacher, so
I forgot about that.
yeah. So I was brought up around a lot of people in the helping profession. I originally wanted to be a physical therapist.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah, and in order to get into school, you had to apply. To apply, you had to do hours of observation. So I went to a hospital, and I was watching the physical therapist, and in the back was the OT, which I had never heard about.
This is in New Jersey?
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I think I like that more. That looks more fun. It was in a hospital, so they were doing more ADL type stuff, but I just thought it looked more fun. I had never heard of OT as far as kids go. So I decided to apply to schools for both OT and PT. And then I really wanted to go to Boston University, and I got into their OT program because that's what I applied for. So I decided to go for it.
See, I never knew you went to
Yeah.
Boston U. I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot about you today.
So, I did my field works after, and I did my pediatric field work at Children's Specialized, which
that's
was,
great.
I did inpatient, outpatient, and school-based there, and learned a lot, and decided I wanted to stay in pediatrics. So I started out, I've worked in early intervention, schools, outpatient, hospital-based, all over the place. And I guess it was about 7 years ago, I kind of felt stuck. I felt that, I didn't feel that I was able to provide the services that I wanted to provide in the places that I was working, just because of so many, I guess rules in the school,
Requirements,
of how you're,
yeah.
And I kind of saw that you were looking for somebody to take over the OT, and was like, let me just find out about this a little bit. And
Little did you know, 7 years
there it
later.
went. So it's been exciting. It's been a really fun journey. I've learned a lot.
So it's been 7 years now?
Yeah,
Wow,
I think it
that
has
went
been. I was just
super
thinking
fast.
about it. It did. So, and it's been a journey, but I feel like I've been able to start to implement, OT in a way that I have always wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do know the feedback that on our end, from the speech therapy end, when parents come, all I hear is just amazing things about your practice. Let me just also explain how we work together. So I own the Speech Tree, which provides speech therapy and ABA. Karalyn owns Ready, Set, Grow, which is OT and PT. Even though we're two separate companies, we work as a multidisciplinary team. So with that being said, we have 3 locations in Morganville and Princeton. Karalyn's company is across the hall, and in Monroe, OT and PT is in our suite. So all I could say is the amount of feedback I get, especially from parents that have gone elsewhere, and then they come to you, and there's, wow, that I didn't realize we were missing, or what we didn't know. And I think the difference that I hear often is how you work with the parent. So a lot of the feedback is, we go to the waiting room, they take our child, and then we don't hear from them again, where you really work to work with the parent.
And that's been my biggest goal in even training my therapist is last night we had a staff meeting. Um,
On a Sunday
and,
night? Wow, you
yeah,
have a
'cause
committed staff.
it's the only time that I could get everybody together because they're always working.
Right.
And so they decided, let's do it on a Sunday night. And that's been kind of my biggest thing, is really educating them on parent education every time we get together, giving them tidbits of how I've, worked with parents, and you're a parent too, so you understand as a parent my feedback to what I would be looking for in a therapist for my own children.
Yeah. In fact, I did bring my child to you. Didn't
Yeah.
you see Jake
Yeah.
for a bit? Yeah.
Yeah. And you saw my child. So,
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
So what about you? What made you
So,
get into speech?
very interesting story. So, I went to Hunter College, Binghamton undergrad. I don't know if you know the story, but Hunter College for grad school. And this was in 1994 when I first went to grad school. Actually, let me step back. In Binghamton, when I was there in 1990, they didn't have where you could pick or choose your class online. So you literally physically
you
had
had
to
to
go
go in
on a
person.
line.
Yeah.
So I went on the shortest line. I was like,
I'm not
that
waiting.
line's short. And then there were speech classes, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And so I kind of had the same journey as you after, where I did hospitals, schools, and I found that it was very limiting. What I felt that the children weren't getting what they needed, or they were put in a classroom they shouldn't have been in. And I'm not the kind of person that can close my mouth, so I would always get myself into trouble by saying, trying to be an advocate for the child, and it was very limiting in that regard. So that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to start my own thing, and the Speech Tree was born.
Yeah. And how many years ago
That
did you start the Speech
was,
Tree?
see, my daughter's, it's probably 14 years ago.
Wow.
Yep. And it started in one small room. I'll never forget it. And then it just, you know how it goes, by word of mouth. If you do the right thing by your clients and your families, they want to tell their story. And so word just spread. And then little by little, then we opened up. We moved, actually. I actually got kicked out because, remember I told you the
Yes.
story? Yes. Because we had children there that have autism, and they were making noise, and everyone complains, and it was terrible. They kicked us out. Anyway, it was the best thing ever because we went to a larger space, and we were able to grow there. And then we opened up Monroe and Princeton, and it all came together when Ready, Set, Grow came along because we could work together.
Yes. No, and I remember the reason why I did, look into you. I had clients of mine who were going to Speech Tree
Oh,
years
really?
and years ago,
Is that right?
and had heard, oh, we go to Speech Tree for outpatient. And when I saw that, you were looking for an OT, I was like, oh, I've heard of them. They're supposed to be good. So
Yay, I love to hear it. So I guess I should ask you and I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to private practice and working and having, your own company, private practice?
There's quite a few. I thought that going into it, again, it would be this, I would be able to do whatever we wanted and make it, everything would be magical. And, and we do take insurance. And honestly, that's a big limitation in what we can do. Both obviously from the business standpoint, and just, for OT is not as well known as the other, speech or PT. And I find a lot of the times, the insurance companies are limiting us now with things like sensory. And so we have to be, it's hard to figure out how we can get things covered for the kids, what they need. So that's been a big one. And just, obviously learning to run a business. I wasn't a business person before. I was a therapist, and a therapist brain and a business brain are very different. So
It's like learning literally by fire,
Yes.
right? You're just learning. That's what I always tell my kids. If you're going to do anything, just take a business class, something
Yes.
to prepare you, because I feel like
you can use it for anything.
you can use it for anything.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. What about for you? What is your biggest?
I'm going to go with the same thing.
Yeah.
Insurance companies, really kind of limiting us, especially we have children with autism and, you know, the law states that it should be unlimited, but
it's
somehow
not.
the insurances get around it. They find a way, if it's self-funded plans or if it's this or it's that. So I do find that to be a huge challenge. And the second challenge is, I think, parent buy-in,
Yes.
right? We're so lucky to have incredible families.
Yes.
But I do feel that there needs to be more education, thus the podcast of why.
Well, and I think,
Yeah.
you know, when they hear bring your kid to speech, bring your kid to OT from the doctor, the doctors don't explain why to them. They
That's
just say,
true.
oh, your kid needs speech, your kid needs OT, go do this. So they do what the doctor says, you know, and not realizing that we can offer a lot of education. We can offer a lot of things that can be carried over at home. And so I think it's also educating the doctors too and the people that are referring out to kind of help that buy-in so that they
Yeah.
can say, you know, speech can help your child with this or OT can help your child with this rather than just saying, oh, take them to speech or OT.
So what do the pediatricians typically, like, why do they refer? What are the reasons that they usually come to you?
Typically, fine motor skills is a big one, and sensory. But I've actually spoken to a lot of pediatricians who have honestly told me they don't know what OT does. And they just,
Oh my goodness.
they don't learn about it in school. So unless they're being educated by someone or they just know that OTs deal with sensory. And so we get a lot of referrals where, you know, well, why did your doctor tell you to come to OT? Well, they said because, you know, he doesn't like to sit still or he doesn't like to wear pants or, you know, things
Right.
like that. So it's a variety, but, you know.
Actually, you should probably explain what OT is.
Yes.
We didn't really get into that. We're
Yes.
just saying OT like everybody should know what that is. But
So OT is very broad, and I think that's the problem and why people have a hard time understanding it. So basically, OT is learning skills that enable you to be as independent as you can in life. So for kids, their biggest occupation is play. So learning skills that enable them to play, first of all. So fine motor skills are big for that, obviously. Using their hands, being able to attend and sit and play, as well as daily life skills too. So you also need all of those things in order to start to learn how to get dressed, to start to learn how to feed yourself. So, you know, OT basically works on all of those skills and able to create independence in all areas.
so when the pediatricians are referring, they may just see, for instance, a child, or the parent might be saying, my child doesn't like the way the shirt feels on them, or they can't sit still, and they're kind
Yeah.
of, so that's kind of the red flags, those are the things that they,
Yeah. Or, you know, my child's having a hard time as they get older. They're having a hard time coloring or cutting or something like that with their fine motor skills.
so I see on our end, as being a speech therapist, it's a lot of crossover, right? That's outside my scope. I always know when to
Right.
refer to you, but so many of our kids that come, and I'm actually, because I'm now teaching as an adjunct professor at Monmouth University, I'm teaching child language disorders. One of the things I just taught last week was about children with sensory processing disorders and how that affects
Their
language.
Yeah,
100%.
it's so connected.
Everything's
is
connected, right? So thank God you're there by our side to help, because I do find, especially when we're able to have the child be seen OT, they get OT and then speech, and I see how they become regulated,
Right.
right? So can you explain what that means when I say regulated? Yeah.
Yeah, so with sensory processing, our body takes in all of the things that are in our environment. So whether it's the lighting, the sound, touch, anything like that, where your body is in space. And then your brain takes in that information and then it has to process it and say, okay, that sound is a fire engine. It's not something to scare me. Or that touch is, you know, just my shirt. It's not going to hurt me. Or, you know, being able to be able to sit and not be thinking about all of the things that are in your environment because your body is telling you it's okay. We don't have to react. So you basically have your fight or flight, you know, stuff, and your body goes into that when it doesn't know what something is. So with kids with sensory processing disorder, they might not know, a sound is going off and what is that? What is that? I don't know. I'm not sure. And then, they become upset about it, or they can't regulate in order to attend to what they're supposed to be doing. So
Regulate meaning they can't control their bodies in a way
to be able to focus
and make that make sense for them.
Right.
That incoming
that
experience.
input. Yeah. So what we do is we will do activities that provide children with sensory input in order to, again, get those receptors over and over and over to say this is what this is. But also there are different types of sensory input that are more calming and regulating. So deep pressure is one of them, and also vestibular movement is another one. Those are the two biggest pieces. Proprioception, which is input into your joints. So knowing where your body is in space helps you feel secure. So jumping, wheelbarrow walking, anything like that where your body is now feeling where it is in space. Okay, I know where I am. I'm safe. I can stay calm and focused now.
Now, I know this is a general question, but I saw even for my twins, one was a sensory seeker, one was
An avoider.
an avoider, right? So I'm assuming you'll have different activities for each child.
So we look at that when a kid comes in. We'll what we do is a sensory profile, and it breaks down the sensory systems, and we look, is this child an avoider? Are they a seeker? But a lot of times they're both.
Both, yes.
Because you become an avoider, but then you seek other sensory input in order to calm yourself down. So a kid that, again, they're overwhelmed, there's a ton of noise going on, so they want to avoid the noise, but then they seek out, you'll see children do things like, kind of fidget or move, and it kind of helps then, they're seeking that input to help their avoidance.
Yeah.
So.
And how that relates to language is if you have a child that has sensory processing disorder and they're dysregulated, think about it when they're in the dysregulated state. How are you able to pick up a skill?
Yeah.
How are you able to focus? It just all works together. So I definitely see the difference.
And when children are small, right, they're learning language by watching others, right?
Yeah.
So if they're not watching somebody or listening to somebody like
imitation,
you said, they can't gain that skill because their focus isn't there. They don't have that joint attention of being able to watch or imitate.
And so how does that play in with children with ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and those self-stimulatory behaviors?
So a lot of those self-stimulatory behaviors are things that calm them. If you think about it, we all have self-stimulatory behaviors, right? A lot of people shake their leg, twirl their hair, tap their pencil, chew on their pencil. Those are all self-stimulatory behaviors. And when you think about when you're doing them, it's usually when you're bored, when you're nervous about something, when you're angry about something, or you're just feeling completely overwhelmed. So it's the same thing, except these children need more. So their behaviors then come out in a stronger sense. And you'll see kids who rock. You'll see kids who, move their arms.
Flap,
and it gets them, again, it's getting them that proprioceptive input, but it's also giving them some visual stimulation too, where they can see their hands moving.
And the vocalization.
Yes, and a lot of times that, not only are they getting oral stimulation, but they're getting vestibular stimulation because your vestibular system is all in your ear. So when your ear's vibrating, when you make your own noises, it all vibrates in your ear.
Wait, back up. So you're telling me that when a child is vocalizing and they're stimming, not only is it helping them for the sound, but their vestibular system.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
I
the
never knew that.
vestibular system, and that's a whole nother podcast.
I never knew that.
The vestibular system's all in the ear.
Yeah.
So if you hum, and you can feel the vibration in your ear.
Interesting.
And to children who are on the autism spectrum, a lot of times they're so sensitive to those little pieces of sensory information that's enough to help them calm down and regulate. So again, another podcast, another day, but there's so much now back and forth. Do we stop the stimming?
I'm just going to bring that up.
Yeah. What do we do? Because again, from a language perspective, if you're stimming, it's going to be hard to focus on something. But nowadays, too, there's a lot of studies that show if you take the stimming away, they're going to gain another
It's going to come out another way.
It's going to come out another way.
So
it's replacing sometimes, I think, teaching it in an appropriate way that they can still, engage with somebody or in their environment, but still have that outlet of self-stimulation.
100%, I agree. So this just came up also, teaching in Monmouth, and there is a big movement. I mean, I guess it was always there. It's just coming out more about, rights for kids with ASD and, not being so, you can do this, you can't do this, letting them their system get what they need.
Right.
So, however, the other side is if it does interfere with their ability to pick up a skill or socially.
Right.
I think that once you get older, it's true. I mean, it could affect you socially. Not that we should, would want to say don't do that.
Right.
But I have plenty of parents that tell me.
Right. And I think it every child is different. So there's a different way to deal with it depending on the child, depending on the situation. But it would be like, I know a lot of adults, right? They chew gum, say, because it helps them and they need something in their mouth, right? So it would be like saying to an adult, you can't chew gum anymore, or, you can't tap your foot anymore. Stop that right now. You wouldn't do that to somebody in the middle of a meeting.
Exactly.
So, again, there's different ways to work around it. But it's hard because I think the kids really, really need that input a lot of times.
So I think also a good idea would be to have give the child their power, to have them more proactive. So if they need some type of sensory input, let's say they're not able to verbally say it, but we have children that work with augmentative devices,
right,
that be able to indicate it on their device, or if the therapist knows ahead of time, building in what you call a sensory diet.
Right.
So what would be a sensory diet then?
So a sensory diet is just adding sensory input throughout a child's day. And it doesn't have to be on a strict schedule. It could be that, every time, at bath time, you give your child a really deep pressure massage with lotion afterwards. And then when they're, if it's a child who chews things all day long, every time they have a drink, give them a straw to give them that input through there. And just kind of adding things throughout their day. But it's a great way to show how speech therapists and OTs can work together because, like you said, I think it's important for a child to be able to express what they need in sensory, in the way of sensory. So the speech therapist can definitely help, like you said, with an augmentative device to be able to say, I need a break right now, or I need, to move. I need a hug. I need, something in my mouth. So I think it's important for a child to be able to express themselves because then otherwise it turns into behavior.
Yeah, I was just about to say it comes out as a behavior.
Yes.
And then often what you might see in the classroom is they may say, oh, well, your child is demonstrating all these behaviors when in fact the etiology and the underlying reason is completely
it's
sensory.
Just that they need something at that moment.
Yep.
So I think that's really the important role of the speech therapist. The OT recognizes, hey, I think there might be some sensory component here. Can you help me figure out how can we get him or her to express that they need this right now?
Yeah. I think we definitely need to spread the word about that.
Yeah.
Not only with families, but certainly in the
healthcare
world, in the schools.
Because I think a lot of behaviors are sensory related and not even sensory. I think people think sensory and they feel like it's this huge, confusing and overwhelming thing to learn about. But when you break it down, it really isn't. And it really is just what we do throughout the day. But like you said, a lot of these kids can't communicate what they need. So it's so important for them to be able to do that.
Yeah. I'm learning a lot here. No, it's interesting because I always see it from like the speech perspective, and I mean, I know we talk a lot, but we never. How often do we ever really get to sit down
and
have a long discussion about this?
Yes,
we don't. So, Oops.
Yeah. And I know recently I've seen in our clinic, there are a few kids who have a joint OT and speech session, which is really great. I've watched a few, and, you know, it's hard because sometimes it's hard to collaborate the timing of it all. But I think it's so great to see that, you know, sometimes when we're working with a kid, again, we're so focused on the motor piece and the sensory piece that then the speech therapist, you know, can come in and really show us how to get the child, because again, they're motivated by the sensory gym, they're motivated by the movement, but the speech therapist can help then motivate them to communicate.
And stimulates vocalization, verbalization. Movement is a huge reinforcer for that.
Yeah.
So I do often hear on our end from parents, we do offer that. Sometimes I may get feedback, well, we don't want like to miss out on a session, or they feel
because they only get a certain amount per year for insurance.
Right. And I understand that.
Yeah.
And that's the limiting part about insurance. But I do know how effective and efficient those sessions can be.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen it. One of the things that we talk about often is, especially in our office, after school, it's crazy, right? We see it's very, very busy for those after school hours.
Yes.
Very, very busy. But we find that, you know, during the day, it could be a little slower because there doesn't seem to be such, would you say, a huge rush towards starting early, right?
Yes.
Starting our kids out early. So that's really what we want to talk about is
Yes.
early identification is key when addressing these issues.
Right. And I guess it's also knowing what are those red flags? What can we be looking at as a parent and not be going crazy and making ourselves nuts about development if our child's not doing something. But I always say it's, you know, it's just OT or speech. It's never going to be, you know, on their record forever.
There is yes.
I think sometimes there's a stigma of I don't know that I want to put my kid in therapy. Is it that bad? Will they just catch up? But my view on it is, why not? I mean, if it's going to help. So what would you say red flags are, you know, I guess for that younger age, maybe 1 to 2 year olds?
Yeah, good question. So the first thing is, how are they communicating? It's not only verbal. We look at all communication. So at 1, typically your first word comes. But even before then, you're communicating, especially from 1 to 2. That's a huge year of progression.
Yes.
So is your child pointing? Is your child taking your hands for assistance, or handing you an object for assistance? Are you finding that they're able to communicate their wants and needs? Often, we may not even know that because maybe you're giving them everything that they need and they don't have to ask, right? So giving the children the opportunity to be able to indicate their wants and needs. And if they're not able to do that, what happens? They become frustrated.
Right.
And the last thing we want to do is wait till that frustration turns into a behavior.
Right.
So I always say the earlier the better, because sometimes it's just even showing parents what to do. It doesn't have to be, you know, a year, 2 years in therapy. Sometimes it's really just showing the parent how we could facilitate language through play. Another thing we want to look at is your child able to understand language? Are they following directions? So often I might hear, oh, sure, they are able to follow directions, like if I say, go get your shoes, or if I point. But what we're looking at is, are they able to follow directions without your cueing or your prompting? Can they understand it? And then certainly play. A lot of children that we see don't know how to play with toys. And they go from toy to toy to toy. And it's mostly because they don't know what to do with toys.
Right.
So a lot is showing a child how to play. And there is so much language in play.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, the children love to come to speech and OT. They come running in. They love it. So it's really a win-win. So I just think it's, you know, spreading that message that even if you come and you do an evaluation, often parents will come, bring their child for an evaluation, and we say, you know what, they're completely age appropriate within normal limits. You don't have to worry about it for now, right? So we can always monitor it.
Right.
But I think
and these are things you can do at home in the meantime to help facilitate some of those skills.
What we don't want is kind of the wait and see. And then what happens is the gap widens.
Right.
So let's say you have a child that is understanding language and they're not expressing themselves. And the gap, like I said, widens, and the frustration comes, and then it plays out in a variety of ways. And by the time they get to the school, behaviors can occur. It affects socialization and all these other things.
Right.
There's no reason to wait until that time.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely easier to again, work on these skills when kids are younger. Because like you said, then those behaviors start. And I find once those behaviors start, it's so hard to change that, because that frustration level is so high. And again, if a child's understanding their language, they know that they can't say it. They know what they want. And it's very frustrating.
And it's frustrating for the parent too, because often
Right.
parents don't know what to do. We do see also, different cultures feel different ways about it. Often there is a stigma associated with it. Parents may be embarrassed. We've heard families tell us, "Oh, don't tell the rest of our family." And of course, we honor that. But I
Right.
do feel that there is a stigma still.
Oh,
to
there
it.
is. And I think there's so much information out there for parents nowadays,
Yeah.
too, that it's overwhelming sometimes.
That's true.
And you see this on a milestone chart here and this here, and the doctor says this and the teacher says this, and you don't know what to do because you have 5 different people telling you 5 different things. But I think as a parent too, it's important to always go with your gut. Like if you feel like there's something there, then I feel like usually you're right.
So typically when I know how on our end, when families come, how we involve them and how we do carryover, how does that work on your end?
Yeah, so I mean, again, it depends on what we're working on, but we usually try to talk to the parents, obviously, after the evaluation. So we'll evaluate and see what's going on, what are the areas that we feel that the child could benefit from working on. And as we're going, we'll give parents things to do at home. So especially with the sensory stuff. If you bring a kid to OT once a week for 30 minutes, and you expect all of a sudden their sensory issues are all going to go away, you're going to be really disappointed because it needs to be things that, like we said, the sensory diet, things that you're implementing, whether it be, something as simple as a weighted blanket at night.
So explain what a weighted blanket would do.
So a weighted blanket is a blanket that's not too heavy. You don't want it to be obviously holding your child down, but just giving a little bit of pressure. So we find with our little guys who have some sensory issues, sleep is one of the biggest components that can create sensory issues.
You mean lack of sleep?
Lack of sleep, yes. So, or broken sleep. So I know you have children, so if you remember back to the days when you had infants, you had twins, so you know it better.
Though it was a blur, but yes.
Well, it's a blur because when you're not sleeping, think about how you feel in the morning, right? Are you regulated?
No. Hell no. Yeah.
So a lot of times kids with sensory issues have trouble settling down, and then in turn their sleep is not good. And then they wake up and it's a vicious cycle of then now we can't regulate during the day, we're overtired. So every little thing is going to bother us. And so really having that bedtime routine is so important. But getting back to the weighted blanket provides some proprioceptive input. So think about a baby. When you have a baby and they're crying, what's the first thing that you do? You pick them up and hold them. So you put them in a swaddle when they go to bed. So we're giving them that same kind of pressure that is so calming and able to, you just kind of feel your body, relax.
So at some point, because let's just say a child is using that every night, does their system become used to it? And then it kind of, how does that work?
It depends. Not typically, because it's not like they have it on all day. And most kids will, kick it off in the night or whatever. But it's just that comfort when you're sleeping. When you lay down, you close your eyes. We use our vision a lot of times to tell where we are in space. When you close your eyes, a lot of times kids with poor sensory processing will close their eyes and, where am I?
Really?
Yeah.
Never thought of that.
It gives them, again, that sense of, okay, the blanket's on me. I know where I am. And again, it's almost like a little hug,
I never thought of that. And that must go along the lines, I know for a fact, children with autism, their sleep cycle often becomes interrupted. Kids literally staying up all night.
And don't need the sleep that we need. But then I think it affects them the next day.
I'm sure.
And then, then you get those behaviors again. So again, we're talking about these behaviors that happen for a reason. And I think that's a big thing too, is that the schools and the parents, you feel like my kid's acting out, they're having these huge tantrums, something must be wrong with them. But I don't think it's that they're quote unquote behavioral. There's something underlying that's causing the behavior.
And so when I was preparing for my lecture last week, I texted you and I
Yeah.
said, wait, there's an eighth sense?
Yeah.
What is this? Can you, I was floored. I've never heard of this.
So a lot of people never even heard of the sixth and seventh sense.
Yeah, it's just five
So
senses. Not
everybody,
anymore. Yeah.
you learn your five senses. You have your sixth and seventh sense are proprioception and vestibular. So like I said, proprioception is where your body is in space, and vestibular is again inside your ear, again helping you where you are in space. Interoception is the eighth sense.
Interoception.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is all of the things that are automatic for us. So how hot or cold you are, how much something hurts when you get, bump into something, how hungry you are, going to the bathroom. So a lot of kids with sensory processing have trouble with interoception. They may not feel hungry. So you see kids where parents say, oh, they won't eat all day, I can't get them to eat anything. It's that the kids don't feel it, so they're not asking.
And on that end, because I'm also,
Yes.
we do feeding and I'm a feeding specialist. So what happens is kids are so smart, right? Not only they may not feel the hunger, but they know that they could eat just enough to take that edge off, or they're
Right.
not starving. And so you may see kids like they may, let's say, graze throughout the day where they could just take a little bit.
A few
and then-
Cheerios, a
yep,
goldfish.
and then they're good.
Yeah.
Right. So we do say that a lot. Let me ask you a question. So I notice a lot of my clients tell me they have kids for the children with ASD, they hold their poop in.
Yes, so that is
So-
a big interoception.
That's okay.
Issue.
They don't like the way it feels. Is that what?
Or they might not even feel when they have to go. So they might not feel, so say if they're wet. And that's, obviously not poop, but parents will say, oh, my kid would sit in a wet diaper all day. Some kids it bothers, but other
Others it don't.
kids, they don't. But they're finding there's a lot of new research now. There's a woman named Kelly, I think it's Mahler, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but she has a big thing on toileting and interoception because they're finding the holding is related to that automatic response of being able to push even.
I have to get that information to some of the parents that I'm working with. I know for a
Yeah.
fact that they would be very
Yeah.
interested in hearing and getting help for that.
Yeah.
So what do you think we could do to really reach parents and professionals, just spreading the word about early identification and
Yeah, I think it's a combination, like I said, of number one, educating the parents. I know in the past, we've had some lectures or little workshops for parents. And it's hard because I know parents are busy
They're
nowadays and it's finding the time that they can do it. So I think doing something like this where parents can listen on their own time
Yes.
to the podcast.
Oh, I wonder if they could do like a call-in where people could call
Right.
questions,
With
ask
questions,
questions.
yeah.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
Ping is saying yes.
Yes.
Ming, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Ming is saying yes. We can
Yeah,
do.
I
think
think that would
yeah.
be great because I think, parents are busy, like I said. So to come to our office
Yeah.
and sit through, an hour of us talking to them about something is hard, especially when you have a child with special needs and don't have somebody to watch them. But I also think talking to preschools and daycares is very important too because, letting them understand what are the red flags and what can they do to really look out for kids that might need therapy and what we do.
Yeah. I love that, and I love a Q&A. I think that's such a good
Yeah, I think
idea.
that would be great.
Yeah, and also more to come up. We were for our future plans for the podcast is to certainly have parents on, and really want to see their point of view and really see kind of, what they're going through, and listen, I'm a parent. I also had children that went through speech therapy and occupational therapy, so I see it on both ends. But it's also good to really see their perspective and
Yeah.
their view on therapy.
Yeah.
I look forward to having developmental pediatricians here,
Yeah.
neurologists, pediatricians, ear, nose, and throat doctors, audiologists, everyone that kind of in that interdisciplinary team that we all work together for the common goal of treating the whole child and knowing that we're a team and that we're all working together, I think.
Yeah, and I know we had talked about looking at having some upcoming classes even for the younger kids.
Yes.
Where we used to do a class together
Oh, that was so much
pre-COVID,
fun.
and it was a language sensory-based class, and we really worked together. And it was younger kids working on the skills that they need, but I think even including parents in it as a Parents and Me
Oh, that's, yeah.
option class where, people can come and learn how to play with their kid if they're not developing in the way that they, typically would.
Well, we do have the President's Day play coming up.
Yes. And then we'll have
Megan,
the
when is
spring
President's
break.
Day? When is that? February 22nd. So school is out. We're going to be having a President's Day play where it's going to be a sensory motor speech group where kids can come for February 19th. Oh, got that wrong, so I don't have a calendar in front of me. But we will share more information on that. And, we're going to be also having during spring break. I know for parents, when school's out, it could be difficult, kind of looking for ideas and what to do with their kids.
Especially if the weather's not so great. It's
Yeah.
hard to be home.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, by the way, we're at Bellworks right now.
Incredible.
So for local parents, great place. I thought right away, kids who need to run, kids who need
Yeah.
to move in the winter.
That's right. As someone who's riding a bike in here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great open space.
So, I think definitely next step would be that Q&A. So we're
Yes.
gonna get that together.
Yes.
It has been a pleasure being here. Again, my name is Harla Rudolph. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I own the Speech Tree. We have 3 locations: Monroe, Morganville, and Princeton. And I'm here with
Karalyn Herban, occupational therapist. We also are in the same 3 locations as the Speech Tree, as Ready, Set, Grow.
and we look forward to our next podcast. And we'll see you next time. Have a good day.
Bye.